All right, and second recording of the evening. Hi, this is Cy, and, well, sorry, I am Cy, and this is Some Idiot Reads, wherein some idiot, hi, goes through and reads stuff. Hopefully you enjoy my monologuing. Monologuing? Is monologuing the right word here? Hopefully this is enjoyable, the sort of thing that you like. Put me on in the background, it's fine. Go around cleaning some stuff. Listen to me ramble. I'm just some old fart. However, I am some old fart reading off some solid work by one Coyote Wallace. People that have been around on the channel for a hot minute now will recognize that I have done several read-throughs of Coyote's Dispatches from Appalachia, which you can find on medium.com. I will have a link in the description of the video. I highly recommend. Go, check it out, give him a follow, toss some cash his way. Dude is solid. I love his writing. Also, I will continue to extol the awesomeness that is his first published work. Well, first officially published book through Nightmare Press. It is, well, hold on. Let me make sure. It might get the name of the book wrong. I happen to have my own copy right here. This has got way too much glare on it. So, it is American Mystic, The Life, Death, and Rebirth of Jimmy Wonderful. Well, bam! Look at that. It's beautiful. Get yourself a copy. It's available on Amazon. Get it. Go ahead. Give it a read. Give it a review. I've had a lot on my plate more recently, so I am still chewing my way through the book, which is the only reason I haven't gotten my own review in. I want to make sure that I do that in absolute good faith, that I have completed the book before I make that review. If I want to give it a solid stamp, I want it to have that solid approval. But buy yourself a copy. Check out its description. Short form version. It's gonzo journalism in an urban fantasy environment. If you enjoyed the work of Hunter S. Thompson, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, or you like the graphic novel Transmetropolitan, I assure you this is right up your alley. And if it's not up your alley, but it's up the alley of a friend of yours, I don't know where I was going to go with that for a second, get it as a gift. Christmas is right around the corner. You know you want to. And even if it's not your sort of thing, you know what? Engage in a little cultural subversion. Buy a copy and then just leave it somewhere and walk away. Maybe insert it in a library. Let someone run across it. Contribute to creative anarchy in the world. Make it more interesting. And, again, go ahead and give a follow on Coyote's Medium page here. I'll have links to all this stuff in the description. Check it all out. And that's what I got for the moment. I've got at least two of these that I want to go ahead and read. I did have a different one of Coyote's. So the two that I'm going to go ahead and at least try to read, we'll see how much I get through all that, are fairly new ones that he has released. There was a different one. I think it was what was the one I was going to read? Oh no! Here we go. I was going to read The Golden Rule of Minding Your Own Damn Business, and I still plan on doing that one. But in light of some conversation bits between he and myself more recently, there was some commentary on Sid Hatfield. And I'm going to level. I am a uneducated swine in this regard. I do not actually have as much information as I could and or should in regards to some of this. And what is referred to by article title, Lost Heroes of Old Appalachia. So I figured, you know what I'm going to do, since he brought these up in private conversation recently, I guess private, public, whatever. Since it came up in conversation recently, and he has the article sitting here, why not go in, give it a read? I can learn something, you can learn something, and we'll go from there. And plus, this has got like 53 applause. Heck yeah. You know what? Let's just dive on into it. The idiot rambling portion, consider it done. We got on deck first here, Lost Heroes of Old Appalachia, The Legend of Smilin Sid Hatfield. The article starts out with a picture of a coyote looking, if I might say, noble and majestic as fuck. so you know he's up to something. I mean that in like an entirely positive way. The mountains of Appalachia are older than the oceans themselves, ancient beyond the reckoning of mortal men, and more timeless than any empire or work of art fashioned by the hands of those men. Our hills have long been home to people from all walks of life. The indigenous Melungeons, I know I'm pronouncing that wrong, correct me, please. Determined immigrants from every corner, freed men seeking equality and fortune, rambunctious bootleggers, pioneers, and coal miners. The stories of these people are as varied as the people themselves, and their heroes, too often forgotten by the march of time, are the very stuff of myth and legend. A great deal can be learned about a people by studying their heroes, whose deeds have, through the lens of time, transcended the mortal realm from which they were born. To understand Appalachia, one must also understand the figures who have defined its people, not just the politicians, nor only those who have towns bearing their name or universities built in their honor, but those whose deeds echo in the hearts of a people for whom community and family are everything, whose dignity is worth dying for, and whose demand for equality matches the rate at which the people pulled their people pulled black coal from the earth. This begins a new series within Dispatches from Appalachia, in which I intend to chronicle the fallen heroes, villains, and complex individuals who have achieved mythological status in these mountains. Some of these figures may be controversial. Many of them have been nearly erased from history books by the concentrated efforts of King Coal and Appalachia's own isolation. However, it is my job to see their legacies resurrected and their stories told from mountaintop to mountaintop. For, if a people forget their own heroes and history, they are no people at all. I am Cy, but the writer here is Coyote Wallace. And this is the legend of Smilin Sid Hatfield, the death of decency on the McDowell County courthouse steps. The man called Smilin Sid. What follows is a picture based on the caption, Modern Day Blackberry. Born William Sidney Hatfield on May 15th, 1891, or 1893, as no official records exist from that time, in the small community of Blackberry in Pike County, Kentucky, Sid Hatfield seemed destined for contrariness, being a Hatfield born in the heart of McCoy territory. His father, Jacob Hatfield, was a tenant farmer, and his mother, Rebecca Crabtree, was a devout Christian. His grandfather, Jeremiah Hatfield, was the half-brother of William Anderson Devil Ants Hatfield, and one of the architects of the famous and bitter Hatfield-McCoy feud. Early accounts of Sid's life describe economic hardship and few opportunities for advancement. Feuds and family ties ran deep in the mountains, and Pike County was staunchly McCoy territory. To this day, the county still commemorates the hanging of Ellison Cotton Top Hatfield for his part in the feud, though Cotton Top is now widely believed to have been too mentally disabled to have fairly stood trial. Life for the young Hatfield could not have been easy. What follows is a picture captioned, Young Sid Hatfield. Looking pretty dapper, if I might say so myself. At first, this boy, who would become a mountain legend, worked the stony soil of his father's farm in Blackberry. Like many other young Appalachian men, when he reached the age of 12, he decided to try his hand at coal mining. Sid's time as a coal miner was short, but extremely educational. He saw firsthand the deprivations, shortcuts, and lethal disregard for the miners at the hands of the mine owners. He quickly left this work behind and instead became an apprentice to a local blacksmith. By all accounts, Hatfield displayed more than passable skill at shaping metal, but he was also prone to bouts of wildness and possessed a sardonic humor that many found disagreeable. He was known not just for picking fights, but for finishing them, and his hell-raising soon drawn the attention of Pike County authorities. During one such incident, or so the legend holds, he was struck in the mouth, and his already poorly maintained teeth were badly damaged. And then what follows is another picture of pre-gold teeth Sid Hatfield. After a few minor skirmishes and lockups, Hatfield seems to fall off the historical radar. However, by the time he reappears in 1919, when appointed chief of police for the neighboring town of Mattawan, West Virginia, only 35 miles away, but firmly Hatfield territory, his reputation had grown to the point that the townspeople were shocked such a rough and unruly character could be given the post. He'd also had every tooth in his head capped with gold, hence the name Smilin Sid. Pause for a moment to consider the sight of this man. Barely 5'5", skinny as a rail, 2 guns worn at his hip like the gunslingers of the Old West legend. He would have peered out at the world with hard eyes from beneath hair slicked with pomade. Dressed in a fine 3-piece suit, as stylish for the time as any worn by men of high society. A small, dapper, and nimble-fingered man with a smile of pure gold and a humor as dark and black as the drift mines he had once fled from. What follows is another picture, Sid Hatfield, 1919. The people thought of him more outlaw than lawman, but in a time of operator's law, an outlaw would prove to be exactly what the people of Mattawan needed most. Mattawan, 1919. The town of Mattawan, West Virginia, was founded in 1875, and as a matter of interest, its first postmaster was none other than Elias Hatfield, another brother of Devil Anse, and father of future West Virginia Governor Henry Drury Hatfield. While Mattawan has dwindled to as few as 400 residents today, during the coal boom, it was the beating heart of West Virginia's coal industry. Shops, saloons, and the trappings of modernity brought to the mountains by industry existed side by side with hired gunmen, called gun thugs, brought in by the mine operators and deputized by the governor of West Virginia, and Union coal miners yearning for their fair share. Mattawan, as Sid Hatfield may have seen it, was a tinderbox awaiting the spark that would ignite the fires of the Coal War. His appointment by Mayor Cabell Cornelius Testerman, a man caught between serving the people of his town and serving the interests of the mine owners who bought every politician they could, was an attempt to find a stabilizing element. Hatfield's reputation, for better or for worse, was enough to dissuade even the drunkest miner or the most cocksure gun thug from misbehavior in those streets. What follows is a picture of Mattawan in 1919. It's worth noting that at the time, the Phelps-Baldwin Detective Agency was imbued with the full powers of the law. These men, fresh off the Ludlow Massacre and known for taking jobs their rivals in the Pinkerton Detective Agency would not touch. Sidebar, that's telling. Were granted sweeping legal authority over issues pertaining to the Appalachian coal miner. Their reach extended not just to West Virginia, but to neighboring Virginia and Kentucky as well. The mine owners, collectively called King Coal, had purchased the governors of these states, the prosecuting attorneys, and the judges. No judge would refuse them a warrant, no prosecutor would pursue their crimes, and local law enforcement was to aid them in their pursuits. The atrocities committed by the gun thugs in this era of Appalachia's history are beyond contempt. They used murder, rape, evictions, beatings, burnings of homes, and displacement into the harsh elements to keep the miners in line and discourage unionization. A miner found in possession of Union materials or suspected of Union sympathies was to be rendered either destitute or dead as a message to all his brethren. What follows is a picture of Baldwin Phelps Detective, Mattawan, 1920. And they look like dickholes. Even though the picture itself is really grainy, I just want to gently caress their face with a hacksaw. One cannot know how many times in his brief career as chief of police that Sid Hatfield was forced to join the gun thugs in their work. His position would have required him to be present for all evictions, and Hatfield certainly displayed a degree of loyalty to his job that may have seemed out of character for a man descended from a family that once made both West Virginia and Kentucky their personal battleground. But one thing is certain as the sunrise. By May 19th, 1920, Sid Hatfield had seen enough of gun thug law. A week prior, at the behest of the Stone Mountain Coal Company, a contingent of Baldwin Felts detectives, gun thugs, petitioned Mayor Testerman and Hatfield to allow them to set up machine gun encampments overlooking the miner communities. They offered both men substantial bribes and promised them great political futures in West Virginia for their troubles. The Baldwin Felts men intended to serve a series of evictions on families suspected of Union sympathies, and the machine guns were meant to serve as a lethal surprise for any miner who dared oppose the gun thugs as they threw their wives and children into the street. Albert Felts, himself one of the founders of the hated Baldwin Felts Detective Agency, is said to have asked Hatfield directly whether he would help or oppose them in their efforts. Hatfield's reply was said to be as follows, quote, "Albert, if what you're doing is within the confines of the law, I will not stand in your way. But if it ain't within the confines of the law, I will stop you from putting those people out of those houses." Follows is a picture of Albert Felts, who has an incredibly punchable face. Word spread quickly to the miners that Hatfield had refused both favor and fortune. From that moment on, Sid Hatfield's course was set. The gun thugs would not cease in their efforts. Hatfield would not budge in his protection of the Union miners, and soon Sid Hatfield would have a new nickname to replace the one given to him for his unusual golden smile. Soon, Smilin Sid Hatfield would become Two-Gun Sid Hatfield. What follows is a picture Hatfield demonstrates quick draw ability for amusement of Albert Felts in Mattawan 1919. The Mattawan Massacre, or Don't Mess with Two-Gun Sid. Early on the morning of May 15, 1920, Albert Felts and 8 gun thugs hired by the Stone Mountain Coal Company arrived on the number 29 train into Mattawan. Knowing of Hatfield's sympathy for the Union miners, these gun thugs descended upon the mining camp of Paint Lick and began executing eviction warrants on the poor families that lived there. Several miners were reportedly beaten, and one woman was thrown from her porch to the dirt. It was not until noon, when the gun thugs returned to town for lunch at the Urias Hotel, that things began to go very wrong indeed. As they were leaving the Urias, the gun thugs were approached by Mayor Testerman, who warned them that Sid Hatfield intended to arrest them. Albert Felts, endowed with his own legal authority by the corrupt governor of West Virginia, responded by ordering his men to arrest Hatfield. Testerman is said to have pleaded with Felts for cooler heads to prevail, but the gun thugs paid him no heed and began to advance down the street toward the train station, where they knew Hatfield would be waiting. What they did not know was that the miners they had so recently victimized had already begun surrounding the town, preparing to expel the gun thugs themselves. However, they would not get the chance, for Sid Hatfield and the gun thugs were already on a collision course. Deputy Fred Burgeff's son, a witness to the Mattawan Massacre, later testified that he saw the Baldwin Felts detectives remove submachine guns from their suitcases in preparation for their meeting with Hatfield. Hatfield, accompanied by his deputy, Fred Burgeff, met the gun thugs in the front porch of the Chambers hardware store. According to Hatfield, Testerman was still trying to dissuade the men from violence when Albert Felts used a small, concealed pistol from his pocket to shoot the mayor in the throat, delivering a mortal wound. The next shot, intended for Hatfield, passed over his shoulder and struck an innocent bystander, Tot Tinsley, killing him instantly. Hatfield drew both of his pistols, 6-shot Colt 1892s, and, with gunfire erupting around him, took careful aim and shot down both Albert and his younger brother, Lee Felts, where they stood. Bob Tinsley, brother of Tot Tinsley, who had just been fired that day for joining the Union, rushed to drag his brother to safety, but was ripped to shreds by gunfire. The volume and intensity of the gunfire were enough to drive Hatfield's deputy into cover, but Sid Hatfield had no intention of seeking shelter. He planted his back against the brick wall of Chambers' hardware store, bullets and shards of stone kicking up around him, and commenced showing the gun thugs that he was fluent in their language. The street was thick with gun smoke, people running for their lives, and hell itself breaking loose on the coal dust-heavy roads. Yet, Sid Hatfield continued his grim work. When the smoke finally cleared and the streets fell silent, 3 townspeople were dead, including the mayor, and all the gun thugs the Felt brothers had brought with them lay cooling beneath the West Virginia sky. Upon hearing of the shootout, West Virginia Governor John J. Cromwell ordered the state police to take control of Mattawan by any means necessary. To spare the townspeople, particularly the Union members, further hardship, Hatfield and his deputies cooperated fully and stacked their weapons, including the submachine guns taken from the dead gun thugs, in the very hardware store where they had made their stand. The coal miners who had surrounded the town were in awe of what Hatfield had done. One man had stood up to the gun thugs and proved that they could be driven out by force. This spark of hope, this idea that if the miners were willing to fight, they might still win their dignity, would go on to be the very ideal that carried them up Blair Mountain when the Cold War kicked off in full less than a year later. Operator law and gun thug order. On January 26, Sid Hatfield stood trial for the murder of at least 7 Baldwin Felts detectives, including both Albert and Lee Felts. The UMWA had called another strike. Train cars had been blown up on the tracks, and striking miners had been found beaten to death beside the roads throughout coal country. Tom Felts, the last surviving Felts brother, ordered his men to find any evidence possible to link Hatfield to the murders and prove that he had fired first. Whether due to the pressure from the striking miners, or lack of evidence, or an uncharacteristic spurt of actual justice, all charges against Sid Hatfield and the miners of Mattawan were dismissed. Hatfield had become something of a celebrity, a folk hero to the striking miners of old Appalachia. The UMWA finally had a face to put to their rebellion, a man whose myth was so much larger than his stature that it gave shade to the mountains themselves. Mother Jones might have been the great organizer, but Sid Hatfield was the righteous fury of a people who would no longer allow their women to be beaten, their homes burned, their children suffocated with coal dust, or their bellies to go empty. He even appeared in short films for the UMWA and posed for several pictures with Mother Jones, one of which is displayed on the screen now. Tom Felts could not stand this. As Sid Hatfield, his friend Ed Chambers, and their wives descended the sandstone courthouse steps of Welch, West Virginia, the gun thugs who had failed to see him convicted were intent on revenge. Hatfield and Chambers had been assured by the Welch sheriff, W.J. Bill Hatfield, a distant cousin of Sid himself, that the town was safe. Hatfield did not wish to appear before court with his gun belt, fearing it would create the wrong impression upon the judge, and was assured that he could travel unarmed without fear in Welch. However, on the day of the trial, Sheriff W.J. Hatfield and his deputies left the town unguarded and headed out to Healing Springs on business. The Felts Baldwin men met Hatfield on the steps and opened fire, giving no mind to the fact that neither man was armed and that they were in the presence of their wives. In his last act of life on earth, Hatfield is said to have shoved his wife away and was shot 7 times in the chest and 3 times in the arm. Hatfield collapsed to the ground, alive but barely, while Chambers, himself shot several times, tried to flee with his wife, only for the gun thugs to pursue him and shoot him down from behind as his wife begged them to stop. What follows is a picture of Hatfield, and I presume it to be his wife, Jessie Lee Maynard. Charles Lively, the most famous and deadly of the Felts Baldwin men who worked as an undercover spy in the UMWA, casually approached the bleeding and dying Hatfield on the steps. Hatfield's wife, Jessie Lee Maynard, pleaded with Lively to spare Hatfield, for surely he was already dying from his wounds. Lively had his men drag Maynard away from the dying Hatfield, stepped above him, and discharged a single bullet into Hatfield's head. What follows is a picture of the courthouse steps where Hatfield died. No charges were ever brought against Charles Lively or the Phelps Baldwin detective men who fired on Hatfield that day. Tom Phelps didn't know it then, but he had just lit the fuse for the Coal War. Sid Hatfield's death would become a rallying cry for miners and all those in Appalachia who had suffered under the harsh treatment of the gun thugs. When miners rushed to the front lines of Blair Mountain, they did not have Mother Jones's name on their lips. Instead, they rallied under Hatfield's banner. He was one man, just one man, from the most outlaw family in the history of America, and many believed he had no business with a badge. Yet, when his people needed him, Sid Hatfield eschewed both prosperity and safety in order to protect the people of Appalachia. His legacy would go on to strike such fear in the hearts of the coal barons and the rich men who believed themselves above the law that erasing it became nearly paramount. These days, there's hardly a few signs to commemorate this hero of Appalachia. So, raise your glasses high tonight, my Coyote fam. Raise them high and give 3 cheers for Smilin Sid, who was an Appalachian first, a lawman second, and a gun thug never. That was a hell of a read. I enjoyed the hell out of that. That was fantastic. I did not know about that. I appreciate it. Coyote, I suspect you will sit and watch this. You seem to watch a lot of these. So directly from me to you, truly appreciate it. I like the presentation of all this information, the research that I'm sure went into it. I dig it, dude. This is awesome. I'm really happy for this one. I was originally going to read the second one of these that you currently have, but in all honesty, I actually want to save that for another read. So one thing that's been commented to me regarding these read-throughs of various things is on occasion that it's really long, because usually I was shooting for like an hour and a half in length of reading. But I'm going to try for at least a couple of these just to see if there's any performance differences. Just try and shoot it to just like maybe a half an hour-ish. We'll see how that goes. And if there's any uptick in viewership and people willing to check it out. But I really hope so, especially with this. Because, again, this was awesome. And what is it? The next one that's on deck is going to be The Sacrifice of Sesko Estep and the Rage of the Bull Moose Special. That just sounds impressive as hell. I cannot wait for that one. If you would like and you want to get a heads up on actually reading that directly, it is currently available on Coyote's Medium page. Free. Totally free. Nothing you have to pay for it. You can go read it. You can toss him some money. That's awesome. Like, tips are how I survive. Without tips, they cannot continue. Please leave tips and donations here, which looks to be https://code-fi.com/Coyote Wallace. I'm going to put a link to that in the description on this. I'm going to make a note to myself so I don't forget, because I am a derpy fuck. Also link to Coyote's Ko-Fi. Give the man some tips. He's awesome. Seriously. I love you, dude. But yeah, I'm going to call it there. That was a mailman. Okay. Y'all take care, as ever. And, crap, at this point, by the time this one comes out, it's going to be... Let's see. It'll be a week before Crimbus. Alright, cool. Anyway, y'all take care. Love every last one of you. Give the video a like, subscribe, comment, do whatever, that standard YouTube algorithm stuff. If you enjoyed yourselves. I'll see y'all later.